Okay, I failed to mention that, I'm not sure if it's reversed. Anyway, Reshma Mannequin, this book was recommended to me by an old co-worker of mine at the San Diego Rescue Mission. Yeah, Mr. David Bell. All right, so following from the last one, we're not to chapter 1 yet, but okay. This one's titled, or this preface is titled, Acknowledging Our Ancestors. Our bodies exist in the present. To your thinking brain, there's past, present, and future, but to a traumatized body, there's only now. That now is the home of intense survival energy. Most of this book is set in the present, but small parts of it will trace two bloodlines of trauma from the past to the present. First, we'll trace trauma as it was passed from one European body to another during the Middle Ages, then imported to the New World by colonists, and then passed down by many generations of their descendants. Secondly, we'll trace trauma as European colonists instilled it in the bodies of many Africans who were forcibly imported as indentured servants and later as property to the New World. They in turn passed down this trauma through many generations of their descendants. On the same soil, trauma also followed another earlier path, one that spread from the bodies of European colonists to the bodies of native people, and then through many generations of their descendants. An estimated 18 million native people were custodians of the North American continent when European colonists arrived. 18 million. They and their ancestors had lived here for an estimated 14,000 years. 14,000 years. Today, this same land contains over 204 million white Americans, over 46 million Black Americans, and just over 5 million Native Americans. The story of the unique arc of trauma in the Native American body is only now beginning to be told. I don't describe this arc except, in parentheses, except tangentially in this book. I hope a wise and compassionate Native writer soon will. In the meantime, I offer my respect and acknowledgement to the people who were stewards of this land long before folks from Africa and Europe made it their home. Do we do that? In the meantime, I offer my respect and acknowledgement to the people who were stewards of this land long before folks from Africa and Europe made it their home. All right, that's the end of that, the preface. This is only 4 pages, so we'll keep going. Okay. This one's titled, Our Bodies, Our Country. As I write these words in early 2017, America is tearing itself apart. On the surface, this war looks like the natural outcome of many recent social and political clashes, but it's not. These conflicts are anything but recent. 156 years ago, they spawned the American Civil War. But even in the 1860s, these conflicts were already centuries old. They began in Europe during the Middle Ages, where they tore apart close to 2 million white bodies. The resulting tension came to America, embedded in the bodies of Europeans, and it has remained in the bodies of many of their descendants. Over the past 3 centuries, that tension has been both soothed and deepened by the invention of whiteness and the resulting racialization of American culture. At first glance, today's manifestation of this conflict appears to be a struggle for political and social power. But as we'll see, the real conflict is more visceral. It is a battle for the souls and bodies of white Americans. While we see anger and violence in the streets of our country, the real battlefield is inside our bodies. If we are to survive as a country, it is inside our bodies where this conflict will need to be resolved. The conflict has been festering for centuries. Now it must be faced. For America, it is an unavoidable time of reckoning. Our character is being challenged, and the content of that character is being revealed. One of 2 things will happen. Ideally, America will grow up out of white body supremacy. Americans will begin healing their long-held trauma around race, and whiteness will begin to evolve from race to culture and then to community. The other possibility is that white body supremacy will continue to be reinforced as a dominant structured form of energy in American culture, in much the same way Aryan supremacy dominated German culture in the 1930s and early 1940s. If Americans choose the latter scenario, the racialized trauma that wounds so many American bodies will continue to mutate into insanity and create even more brutality and genocide. This book offers the necessary new insights, skills, and tools for creating the first scenario. It is written for every American of any background or skin color who sees this scenario as vital to our country's survival and who sees the second scenario as America's death warrant. When people hear the words white supremacy or white body supremacy, they often think of neo-Nazis and other extremists with hateful and violent agendas. This is certainly one extreme type of white body supremacy, but mainstream America culture is infused with a more subtle and less overt variety. In her book, What Does It Mean to Be White?, Robin DiAngelo describes white supremacy as the all-encompassing centrality and assumed superiority of people defined and perceived as white, and the practices based on this assumption. White supremacy does not refer to individual white people per se and their individual intentions, but to a political, economic, social system of domination. The system is based on the historical and current accumulation of structural power that privileges, centralizes, and elevates white people as a group. I do not use it to refer to extreme hate groups. I use the term to capture the pervasiveness, magnitude, and normalcy of white dominance and assumed superiority. That's the end of that quote from What Does It Mean to Be White? One aspect of this type of white body supremacy involves seeing whites as the norm or standard for human and people of color as a deviation from that norm. An actress becomes a Black actress, and so on. In a piece for Salon, she adds, thus we move through a wholly racialized world with an unracialized identity. For example, white people can represent all of humanity. People of color can only represent their racial selves, end quote. This everyday form of white body supremacy is in the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the culture we share. We literally cannot avoid it. It is part of the operating system and organizing structure of American culture. It's always functioning in the background, often invisibly, in our institutions, our relationships, and our interactions. The cultural operating system of white body supremacy influences or determines many of the decisions we make, the options we select, the choices we open to us, and how we make those decisions and choices. This operating system affects all of us, regardless of the hue of our skin. Here's a typical example. Two economists responded to 1,300 help wanted ads in the Boston Globe and the Chicago Tribune in the fields of customer service, clerical services, sales, and administrative support. In all, they responded with more than 5,000 made-up resumes. The names on those resumes were randomly assigned, but some, example, Jamal Jones or Lakeisha Washington, sounded African American, while others sounded white, for example, Emily Walsh and Greg Baker. The researchers counted the number of employers who asked to set up interviews or get more information. The imaginary white candidates received interest from 1 in 10 employers. The imaginary African American candidates received interest from 1 in 15. Similar studies have since obtained similar results. There's a footnote down here that says, as a cross-check, I had my research assistant search the names Emily Walsh and Lakeisha Washington on Facebook. He found hundreds of Emily Walshes, of which 0 were Black. All but 2 were white, and 1 was male. He also found many dozens of Lakeisha Washingtons, all but 1 of whom were Black. I'd like to see a follow-up study using African names, for example, Kojo Ofuso, instead of African American ones, to learn whether employees responded in the same way to Black job applicants who do not appear to be from America. Yeah, I'd like to see that too. I missed a footnote on the previous page about the quote. DiAngelo describes herself this way. My area of research is in whiteness studies. I have been a consultant and trainer for over 20 years on issues of racial and social justice. I grew up poor and white, end quote. Where was I? From the next page. All right, here's another recent example of everyday supremacy. My wife, Maria, this is a good example, purchased some household items at Walmart and was pushing her cart towards the exit. A Walmart employee stopped her and asked to see her sales receipt and checked the items on the receipt against the items in her cart. I guess we've all been there, just going through the line. I always just stop because I feel like yeah. A Walmart employee stopped her, asked to see her sales sheet and check the items against the items in the cart. Marie was thirsty, so instead of leaving the store, she bought a soft drink and sat down on a bench near the exit. Over the next 2 and 3 minutes, she watched as about 20 people left the store. The employee stopped to double check the receipts of all 8 of the Black customers who walked past and none of the non-Black ones. Understandably, my wife was not happy about this, and she told the store manager about it. The manager, who was white, was aghast. He immediately called over the employee, who was also white, and confronted her. She was surprised, apologetic, and a bit mortified. She insisted she was not deliberately targeting Black customers, but only checking people randomly. My wife told me she seemed completely sincere. I believe, okay. My wife told me she seemed completely sincere. I believe that's what she generally thought she was doing. The employee was not targeting Black customers deliberately. She was targeting them unconsciously and reflexively. But the pain that such actions create for Black Americans is still felt quite consciously. Relatively few white Americans consciously recognize, let alone embrace, the subtle variety of white body supremacy. In fact, there is often no way to measure or recognize it. Imagine a real Lakeisha Washington or Emily Walsh. She would have no way of knowing why any particular employee did not respond positively to a resume. Nor would my wife have noticed anything odd about the Walmart employee's actions if she hadn't stopped to relax and have a cold drink. For most Americans, including most of us with dark skin, white body supremacy has become part of our bodies. How could it not? It's the equivalent of a toxic chemical we ingest on a daily basis. Eventually, it changes our brains and the chemistry of our bodies, which is why, in looking at white body supremacy, we need to begin not with guilt or blame, but with our bodies. All right, that's the end of the prefaces of A Grandmother's Hands by Reshma Kina Minikim. As again, I'm doing these in short little spurts. Yeah, to the next one.